It is crunch time, ladies and gentlemen. If your trade deadline's not next week, it's going to be the week after. So we really got to make sure our rosters are exactly how we want them. We have running back injuries, changing landscapes. We got a lot to do. So let's not waste too much time. Let's dive right into this after you drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you play fantasy football and you've somehow not subscribed already. Leave a question in the comment section. I'm going to do my best to try to get to it for you. And of course, in that comment section, in the description of this video, you can find a link to Underdog Fantasy where you can check out all these cool player props every single week. And on top of it, they have weekly best ball drafts you can get in on the live stream if you sign up with promo code FLOCK. Not only are you going to get into drafts with us, but you will also get a 100% deposit match up to $100. So please make sure you check that out in the link in the comment section. But I think that should be it. Let's go through. Let's dive into these buy low running backs. We'll have some more exciting players later on in the video. Let's go with someone very boring first, because sometimes, because he's boring, he's going to come at a discount. Nobody really wants him. Let's look at David Montgomery. Now with David Montgomery, I get it. Yes, he's not some superb talent. Way back 2 years ago, I was making an argument that David Montgomery was so overvalued that everybody viewed him in an incorrect light. But at this point, everybody just kind of assumes that David Montgomery is some jag. We had people talking about Khalil Herbert eventually going to take over as the starting running back for the Chicago Bears, which I never understood, because if you looked at the underlying numbers, they were always using David Montgomery more than Khalil Herbert. But now Herbert's actually removed from the situation. So while David Montgomery is never going to be the running back one for the Chicago Bears, well, we know that is always going to be Justin Fields. It will. There's still more than enough opportunity for David Montgomery to come out here and absolutely crush. Now, of course, Justin Fields has been putting the team on his back over the past few weeks. Fields has been phenomenal. He's been like the quarterback one overall. Now, do we think that we see this continued rate of dropbacks for Justin Fields? Maybe you could make the argument. Yes, I would say they probably scale him back ever so slightly because, hell, he's still one end of the spectrum. He has to come back to the mean just a little bit. But it doesn't even matter if he does, because if we go through and look at the combined volume you've had from David Montgomery and Khalil Herbert so far this season, we're going to go from weeks 1 to what we just had this past week. These are going to be total touches between these two running backs and counting carries and receptions. 31, 22, 25, 20, 20, 23, 28, 34, 22, 20. Now you heard that correctly. The minimum workload that we've had between these two running backs so far this season has been 20 touches in a single week. So now for removing Khalil Herbert entirely from this situation, where this has been a running back that's been getting on average about 8-9 touches a game, if we remove him and give that volume to David Montgomery, Montgomery should be able to crush. I don't want to say he's going to be a running back one, but I think he is a safe option as a high-end RB2, mid running back two. Now, full transparency, he's probably not going to get every single one of these Khalil Herbert touches. I'd imagine that they elevate the running back three, or maybe David Montgomery splits the Khalil Herbert workload with that running back three. But if he is, say, getting 75% of the touches that these two guys would have had, maybe 80%, that is a lot for pretty much on average about 18, 19 touches per game. That is exciting for Montgomery, because when Justin Fields has the elite rushing ability himself, we know based on the Lamar Jackson effect that we've seen in Baltimore over the years, that the running back that's going to be starting here is going to be significantly ahead of just an average running back with yards per carry, with pretty much any efficiency metric that you're going to look at. Not really because David Montgomery is some superb talent, but it's because if you're a linebacker, you see Justin Fields go hand the ball off to David Montgomery. You can't crash down on Montgomery, because if Fields pulls the ball, takes it across the edge, you just gave up a 20-yard gain. So it does give a little bit more wiggle room for these running backs in a good situation. So with the hip injury for Khalil Herbert, I think it's wheels up for Montgomery. I know that was a long explanation, but I feel like if we're selling David Montgomery, it's going to be a little bit of a difficult task. Now, going over real quick update with someone that's been on a buy low video for us pretty much every single week for the past 2 months, it seems. Rashad White. Now with Rashad White, I mean, I'm out here doing my due diligence, trying to read Tampa Bay Buccaneers fan pages, trying to figure out the Leonard Fournette injury update. Sadly, we don't have anything as of now because they are on bye. I mean, Leonard Fournette's probably somewhere in the Bahamas resting up that hip. I don't think we're going to be getting too many injury updates when it comes to Fournette this week, which is a little frustrating because I want to just call Rashad White, I mean, a low-end running back one going forward. But it sounds like based on the initial injury that maybe the Leonard Fournette hip injury wasn't as serious as I don't want to say hope for, but as we initially thought for all our Rashad White teams. I think maybe what happened is Fournette came up at the end of the play and he was like, ow, my hip. And then we had this coaching staff look over and go, oh crap, Fournette, sit down the rest of the game. Sit down. He tried to kill Tom Brady by throwing him a pass. God knows why. And at the same time, obviously, Rashad White had been dominating the Seattle Seahawks. So with White, I would still love to include him on the buy low running back video. I would feel much more comfortable in doing so if it wasn't for the uncertainty that we had with this Leonard Fournette injury. What you may want to do is wait a week. And then if your trade deadline's next week or the week following, if we can go through and trade for Rashad White next week, once we are getting the practice reports from Leonard Fournette and seeing if he's going to miss time or not. Because if he were to miss time, I think White slots in as a low-end RB1, high-end RB2. Now going over to our next guy, I don't even know if we should include him. Can we just throw Mixon on here? I just want to include Joe Mixon for 1 second. Please, I understand this is an obnoxious thing to say. He just scored 5 touchdowns. But because he just scored 5 touchdowns, we know touchdowns are extremely volatile throughout the course of the season. We've had a lot of people that are part of the flock that kind of realize that, oh, okay, maybe we buy low on Gabriel Davis a month with no touchdowns. And then after he has 4 touchdowns in 2 weeks, we go through and sell him high. Do we just sell players when they start scoring touchdowns and buy them when they haven't scored? It's not as simple as that. Please don't sell Joe Mixon. I don't know if you can buy him. I just want to get him on this video saying don't sell him. I know that he's never going to score 5 touchdowns in a single week again. Obviously, that's not going to happen. Your league mates know that as well. That's why you're not going to be able to go out there and sell Joe Mixon and just bring in Saquon Barkley. But if we're looking at the underlying numbers, 50 targets this season, 151 carries, already through the bye week. I understand why you'd be interested in selling Joe Mixon. Please just keep him on your team, okay? I don't think we can go out there and buy him, though, so maybe he's not the perfect guy to include in the video. But now going over to our next guy, someone that has been on that buy low video next to Rashad White for God knows how long. James Conner, a perfect spot. James Conner going out there and dominating. I mean, this is exactly what we've come to expect. If you look at the underlying snaps for James Conner, his first week back with the rib injury against the Seattle Seahawks, hell, James Conner was seeing about 75-80% of the snaps here. I mean, the best buy low candidate you could have ever found coming off a game where he had pretty much every snap and only 7 carries. Well, this past week, he even expands that role, as you would assume, because he's another week removed from that rib injury. He plays damn near every single snap, as if this is James Conner from 4 years ago in Pittsburgh. He sees 21 carries, 69 rushing yards. He only has 3 targets for 17 receiving yards. But if we go back to what we previously had this season, I mean, hell, 5 targets, 3 targets, 5 targets, 4 targets, 6 targets. If we remove the 1 game he left injured, you actually have James Conner averaging 5 targets a game. You're seeing these consistent snaps. You have Eno Benjamin getting away from this team. I can't really find much news on Eno right now at the time of this recording. I'm assuming this has something to do with the locker room, off the field. I'd imagine they don't waive Eno Benjamin because of his play. Not too worried about Keontae Ingram coming in and taking a role from James Conner. I think Conner's a safe bet to have about 80% of the snaps in this offense. And the removal of Zach Ertz is interesting because with Zach Ertz, I would say that for the success of the Arizona Cardinals, he does not matter nearly as much as a field-stretching wide receiver, someone that's going to give you speed on the outside, that's going to be able to keep 2 safeties back, that's going to be able to have lighter boxes for James Conner. I don't think Zach Ertz is going to be changing the defensive coordinator's game plan one way or another, but he will get targets, especially close to the line of scrimmage, where we'd imagine that a lot of those touches would go to James Conner. So possibly the removal of Zach Ertz could actually be a decent thing. I mean, a good thing for Conner. It's a neutral thing to say the least. I think this offense does get better when we get Hollywood Brown back in a few weeks, though. And then all of a sudden, I mean, Kyler Murray's finally rolling with James Conner, Rondale Moore, DeAndre Hopkins, Hollywood all on the field at the same time. Something we haven't had this season. But now going over to our next guy, super expensive. So just be prepared. If you're going to buy him, you're going to have to pay up for him. But we are going to put him on the list for this week. Whereas if your trade deadline is this week, you got to trade for Kenneth Walker today. If your trade deadline is next week, then maybe we wait until he's coming off the bye. But with Kenneth Walker, I mean, yes, he only has 17 rushing yards against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in Germany. It was gross. I mean, we kind of talked about this. The fact that they were playing at 6:30 in the morning, West Coast time. Now, I know they stay there for a couple of days, so maybe that helps them with the jet lag a bit. But I'm no NFL player. I wish I knew their morning rituals. I would imagine if you're playing at, say, 9:30, you're waking up at 6:30 at the latest. So if they're playing at 6:30 their time, waking up at 3:30 in the morning their time, even if they've been there for a few days and maybe getting a little more adjusted, still crazy. I can't believe the NFL asked them to do it. But regardless, if we were looking at this, it was a very bad day for the Seattle Seahawks in general. I don't want to place the failure of Kenneth Walker on Walker himself. Maybe I'm a little bit biased. He's my second most drafted running back in fantasy this year. You know, I'm a big Kenneth Walker fanboy. What I really like to see from this week, though, is even though he only has 17 rushing yards, the one hesitation I've had with calling Kenneth Walker a locked and loaded mid-running back one rest of season is the involvement as a pass catcher. Where with Kenneth Walker in college, he really didn't catch the ball very often. I mean, early on in his NFL career, we hadn't seen that either, but he proved himself this past week. This past week, when we finally saw the Seattle Seahawks actually having to play from behind, because I want to remind y'all, I mean, the 4 games that Kenneth Walker had started previous to this, they won all 4. They beat the Cardinals, they beat the Chargers, they beat the Giants, and then they beat the Cardinals again. And none of those games were close. So we hadn't had to see Kenneth Walker be involved as a pass catcher. But now when they trail, we know that that's going to be the case. He had 8 targets. So I'm actually more excited about Kenneth Walker after this game, even though he only had 17 rushing yards, than I was previously based on the usage as a pass catcher. But now going over to our next guy, I do want to throw Miles Sanders on here in that with Miles Sanders, I want to put a massive asterisk here. Do not trade for him if you're playing in a full PPR league. Full PPR format, honestly, you don't really want Miles Sanders. Kenneth Gainwell is getting targeted out of the backfield. I mean, you do have a couple of running backs here drawing targets. It doesn't matter too much, though, because we are in a situation where Jalen Hurts just doesn't check down. And you can't blame Jalen Hurts either. I mean, we've talked about this for years now, going back to the days where Drew Brees had Alvin Kamara. Of course, Kamara is going to be a running back that's able to get 10 targets a game, because if you're Drew Brees, okay, we draw back. Look at our first read, not available. Look at our second read, not available. Oh, we got a linebacker crashing in. Can I scramble? No. Get the ball to Alvin Kamara, check it down ASAP. If we go through that same scenario with Jalen Hurts, you drop back, you see A.J. Brown covered, you see Devonta Smith covered. Oh, crap, linebacker crashing down. Let me run it for a first down. Jalen Hurts has that in the range of outcomes for him every single play. He doesn't have to go through and check the ball down to Miles Sanders. Sanders has had a whopping 1 reception over the past 4 weeks. He's had 11 receptions so far this season. So please don't trade for him in a full PPR format. In a non-PPR format, I think he could be intriguing based on the fact that everybody and their mom just saw the Philadelphia Eagles get smacked by Washington. I think nobody was expecting this. I mean, I think we can safely say that Washington had about 40 rushing attempts in this game. It was the weirdest game of football for the year 2022 that I've ever seen. So you really didn't have the Philadelphia Eagles with much volume at all. I mean, we actually, on Underdog, took Jalen Hurts at fewer than 30.5 passing attempts, thinking the Eagles were going to boat race him there. And we actually hit the fewer than 30.5 passing attempts because Washington played keep away all game. So in a non-PPR format, I think Sanders could be an intriguing guy to look at because I think Philadelphia is going to be a much better offense going in towards the future, whereas it's a little bit deceiving based on the Commanders playing keep away this past week and not allowing the volume to be here. But I think that's all I have for everybody. I will say a quick side note. These running backs that are maybe not giving you production on a week-to-week basis that you're excited about but have the elite level ceiling, guys like A.J. Dillon, Kareem Hunt, Alexander Mattison, please don't drop them just because the starting running backs in front of them has stayed healthy up until this point. Still, if you were to have an injury to Aaron Jones, Dalvin Cook, or Nick Chubb, you could see those running backs win fantasy leagues. So don't necessarily go out and then give the world for them, but they're still worth roster spots. I think that's all I got for you. Of course, thank you so much for checking out the video. If you have not done so already, go down there, drop a like on the video. Subscribe to the channel if you play fantasy football. If you have any questions, down there in the comment section is going to be the best place to leave them. And in that comment section, you can find a link to Underdog Fantasy, where you can check out all these cool player props. When you sign up for Underdog and use promo code FLOCK, they're going to match your first deposit dollar for dollar up to $100. You can also get into drafts with us on the live stream. Just make sure you go through the link in the comment section, the link in the description, promo code FLOCK, available in damn near every state. But thank you again. I appreciate you. I hope you have a great day, and hope we get to see you in the live stream tonight.